So today we're starting a 2-part series with Jamie Donnelly about virtual reality. Well, I know a lot of folks like me who are grabbing these virtual reality headsets and putting phones in them. And then there's other things that we're doing too. And when we have a new technology, we have to have a new way to use the technology. Now, there are safety concerns. Did you know that some VR headsets can make you nauseous? There are all kinds of trends and there's all kinds of issues with trust. And there's also some really cool things happening with virtual reality in healthcare, just so many different things. So I sat down with Jamie Donnelly and we just had a good long conversation about virtual reality. Now, this is the 10-minute teacher. That means I have divided it into 2 parts. So you're going to learn a lot about virtual reality, just like I did. Honestly, I hadn't even thought about kids getting nauseated or car sick inside of VR, but it's definitely something I'm going to address when we get our headsets out this week. That I'm so excited about having. I mean, I could just imagine being thrilled with a headset and then having somebody get sick in my room. That's just like the worst as a teacher. You just do not want to have that happen. So I hope you enjoy this 2-part series. Part 1, episode 412, VR nausea, safety, and trends in the classroom.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
Today, we're talking with my friend Jamie Donnelly. She is an educator in East Texas and also the creator of the AR, VR, and Edu Chat. Now, Jamie, today we want to talk about the protocols for virtual reality. Now, for those of you who don't know, you probably all do, but we'll just say it anyway. Virtual reality is when you put on a headset like the Oculus Rift or Windows Mixed Reality or even Google Cardboard and you're looking at your phone where your eyes are pretty much covered up and you are in VR. Do you have any rules or guidelines when kids go into VR and are using that equipment?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think that when you're dealing with many technologies, you have to have kind of a guide on how to use that technology, especially when we're talking about VR. There's many different ways people are using it. They could be in a mobile device and put it in a viewer. So you have to be very concerned about the mobile device that's inside of that viewer. How they're going to use it has a lot to do with your students, their ages, what exactly they're going to do with it. So I think that when you kind of establish, just like any technology, what the understanding is, a lot of the safety also concern is, sanitary. So going from one student to the next, there has to be something set up there to make sure that they're able to handle. You have a kid that's sinuses or, pink eye or whatever they may have. If they have something around their eyes, nose, mouth, and ears, and those are some of the things you have to consider as you're switching it from student to student. So there's certainly some ideas to establish. I think one of the biggest things is, what device do you have? If you have a mobile device, you have to be really concerned with the fact that the tracking, so the frame to rate, that as you're moving your head left or right, if your mobile device can't handle, whether it's slower Wi-Fi, your network issue, just an older device, lots of storage being used, whatever that might be, if the movement of where you're moving and the movement of the device actually tracking where you're moving doesn't stay very close to your movement, it does definitely create some problems as far as feeling ill. So that many students face that when they're on mobile devices in VR, as opposed to our higher end devices like being on the Oculus or even HTC Vive if we're talking about augmented reality. The Vive for VR or the HoloLens for AR. So thinking about some of the tracking and how we're using the technology, a lot of those factors when we consider, our kids even thinking about how quickly things are changing in their eyes and their face, not triggering a seizure. I mean, just like video games or TV or anything else. So there are quite a few factors to consider when you're using this technology that I don't think many people consider beforehand. They just jump right into it. Hey, hop in there. Their kids get sick and it takes them a good half an hour to recuperate, They
get sick. So honestly, I've never seen this. So we've used, I use Windows Mixed Reality with an Acer headset and I use I've got the cardboard, I've got the other viewers, the merge cube, all the different types of things. But some of it, the kids actually get ill. Is there a particular offending app, or have you seen this? And is it like literal nausea, throwing up, I'm assuming, or just feeling bad and I need to sit down, or what?
Well, with the lower end devices, it's definitely going to be a lot more. Your brain knows when you're looking at something and it's not moving as quickly as you're moving. So it will make you feel very sick to your stomach, like you need to throw up. Like car sickness. That is the same concept. If you're sitting in the back seat, you can't see you're moving, you get sick to your stomach. Yeah. It's very to that same concept.
Oh,
and so
yuck.
If you're into a roller coaster and, it's not tracking as quickly as they're moving, then their brain is going to feel that, and it definitely starts making you feel pretty sick.
I've done, a 360 video where I jumped off a cliff. And my stomach definitely, and I think that was more because I really thought I was there than it was tracking. I felt like I was really jumping off a cliff. And that's the first time I noticed almost a visceral response. So we can expect, if it's a simulated, pretty genuine environment, we can expect a similar physical, probably, response than we might have in the real world, huh?
What's interesting about that is when I first started sharing VR several years ago, I was sharing this with educators, and I had an educator that was gets so car sick, has to be so concerned with that, just has issues with that big time. She couldn't watch somebody else do VR without getting sick.
Really?
She couldn't actually be in the room. She was just she just could relate to how that feeling was. And just brought even nausea from there. So wow. I think that they're, again, going back to how much time our kids are spending in this. When you spend too much time, even me in the Oculus Go, if I'm spending too much time in it, I start to feel sick if I'm having to look around and do a lot of movement. So those types of things that kind of catch you by surprise, you don't realize how bad it is until all of a sudden you are sick. Wow. And then it takes you a good little while to get through it.
So limiting the time. So what do you think is a fair time limit?
I think most of our activities are within, 5 to 10 minutes. I think 10 minutes is kind of pushing it, depending on what you're covering. So most of the time, I think we're going to be able to get through the actual VR activity, because then they're going to need to take it off. They're going to need to explain. They're going to be assessed. They're going to describe whatever that is, that they just encountered and experienced. There's going to be more to it. Now, if they're creating in VR, that is a whole different ballgame. But most of the time, what we're doing right now is just going in and experiencing what we maybe created on a different platform. Yeah,
and we're definitely going to talk about creating a VR in VR in another show. One thing it can do in when is mixed reality. There's obviously some advantages and disadvantages of some different things, but the kids can shoot film of what they're doing and then use that film, say, in a movie they're making. You can go to China and shoot like you're in China, which is awesome. So there are ways to assess, but let's back up and I'm going to talk a little bit about my safety protocols and just ask you what you think. So when my students go into VR, I have a tethered device. So it's the Acer mixed reality headset, and I have required there to be a wearer and a watcher. So the wearer is the person, obviously, who has the headset on. The watcher is the person who makes sure for their safety. And they typically will go in for 10 minutes and then they'll time it. And then the watcher can become the wearer. And then there's a new watcher on stage. But, that's to, all the safety things of making sure that everything's set up right. Also, I have a strict rule that if somebody's in VR, nobody else touches them or talks to them. And then I have, rules for how do you take a person out of VR, because it can be very disorienting to be, if somebody just flipped your headset up, that is just very disorienting. And I want a classroom of trust. So I don't want kids to, have a place where they feel like, somebody doesn't have their back. And literally this person has their back. So I take it very, very seriously that person who's in VR, they're in a respected, safe place. Do not go in their area, and then the watcher's job is to make sure of that. Now, have you seen what are some protocols some other people are using? Because you're on over AR, VR, and EduChat. What are some things you've seen? Do a lot of people appoint a watcher, or does the wearer just put it on and they're just there?
You know what? I think a big push right now is one-to-one, and I could not agree with you more to have it, one, for many other factors, but certainly having one person wearing, one person watching, or a group of people that are collaborating. Like the Oculus Go, this new feature that was just released is mirroring. So you can cast it on another device that the other students are there engaged with you. Depending on what device you're wearing, you can also get up and have the movement. Not all VR does that. So having remotes that you're actually actively engaged in a space, that's some other major factors when you're considering, like you said, being disoriented as you're moving around the space and engaged. When you're wearing a Vive, you're kind of tethered, like you said, to within a cord. The Oculus Go, you have no cord. So there's nothing really tying you to your space to fill any, give. So I think that I know for my daughter, she's 16, and when we were getting ready for ISTE this past summer, she was doing a tour in the Looking Glass, and it was bringing you back in time. She's in there, engaged, active at the hotel room, and then she took it off and she went, "Aw." And I went, "What?" And she goes, "Oh, I just came back to reality." Like, it just kind of like not the same as what I just experienced. And I think all of us, maybe we don't say, maybe we're okay to get out, but I think there is a time of kind of like realigning yourself, readjusting, and especially if you're getting up and moving, that's adding another obstacle.
Stay tuned to tomorrow's show to get the ending of this fun interview. And we'll start off tomorrow by talking about how we have the protocols for exiting virtual reality. Now, this week is the last week you can get in on Angela Watson's 40-hour work week. I've talked about it before, and going through the program has saved me 4 to 5 hours a week. I've become so much more productive, and you can check it out at coolcatteacher.com/40.
Thank you for listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. You can download the show notes and see the archive at coolcatteacher.com/podcast. Never stop learning.